All right, everybody, on today, I think I wanted to title today's episode Sleep More and Suck on These Mints because we had an incredible guest and I got taken to church about how to survive Stress Nation. But my friend Justin was on the show, who's an incredible entrepreneur, an incredible human, and an absolute ninja when it comes to health and function and really, really cortisol. He's the founder of a company called Rebalance Health, which is a product that he sent to me to take. But in today's episode, we talk about how the pace of humanity is preventing us from actually winning the race, how we're basically cutting ourselves out at the knees by not prioritizing the things that allow us to function at our greatest ability. We talk about stress, we talk about sleep, we talk about cortisol, we talk about adjustments to our habits and behaviors, the importance of them. And I think the undertone of this, and we've talked about sleep a ton, is really allowing ourselves, our superpower, to be the best version of ourselves as an entrepreneur, as a human, as a person, as a father, as a husband, as a wife. And Justin not only talks the talk, but he walks the walk. And his story is absolutely incredible. And to, by the way, even notice that he's 50 years old and looking like he's 25 and just genuinely a walking knowledge bank of embodiment of all of this has been an absolute incredible honor to have him on the show. I took pages of notes personally. I took a lot of reminders, and he shares everything that he knows about sleep and managing your stress and supporting yourself to be the best version of yourself, and how to give yourself the rocket fuel to be able to succeed in your business. And if you're listening to this as well, I want you to listen to the undertone of what he's also sharing, because he's the CEO of a massive company. He had successful exits. He talks about how he supports his team, what the power of vision is, how we should be excited about the things we're doing, and really how to support ourselves at the deepest level and not keep chasing solutions for symptoms, but to get to the root cause, to be in our superpower. And so this episode was an absolute gift. I feel incredibly knowledgeable and officially called out on some of the things that he shared that I'm going to be integrating today and putting into practice today so that I can keep making adjustments and be the best version of myself. And so I'm really excited for you to listen to the show. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show. If you're watching this, I'm still in backpack princess mode. I don't own Louis Vuitton and Gucci bags, even though that's what's behind me, because I'm stealing one of my incredible friend's studios. But that has nothing to do with today's episode. But if you're watching this, I want to acknowledge it, because today I feel like we're all about to receive a gift. I've had the absolute pleasure of connecting with this gentleman before this call, and I've been taking his products. And how to describe this is an incredible entrepreneur, incredible man, walking wisdom, completely aligned at the deepest level, stands for humanity, has experienced all of the personal journeys and obstacles that show up to create meaning and impact, and literally at every level is congruent in everything that he says, does, and to the point where, no joke, it takes a lot, but his products are in front of me and they've been stuck in my suitcase for 30 days now because I've been taking them, and it's had a dramatic effect on my health and my ability. And so I have no idea what today's conversation is going to go, but I literally am ready to be taken to church. And just because I can say this and I'm a man who's comfortable, very easy on the eyes. And when you hear his accent, you're just going to melt. And so I feel like his message is way more potent because of his delivery as well, because I could listen to him all day. And so without further ado, Justin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, George. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man, I love it. I even love that before the show, for everybody listening, we were talking about life and the serendipitous moments of, like, he went to college where I grew up and we lived 20 minutes from each other and almost moved to the same city at the same time, except he ended up in Boulder and I ended up in Montana. And so it just feels like the perfect serendipitous moment to have today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. So for everybody listening, we'll get into his company because I'm now a massive fan of his products and I take them every single day and I sleep like a baby, like 9.5 hours a night. But we were talking before the show about really health in general. And one of the things that entrepreneurs, a lot of us that listen to this show deal with every single day is stress. And it's this instant gratification. We have access to all these devices and technology, and we're just surrounded by stress. And it's really a symptom of something deeper. And Justin just started to take me to church before we hit record. And so, my brother, I would love it if you could kind of unpack, stress and how you see it, and how big of an impact it's having, and how easy it is to really shift it if we have the right mindset.
Absolutely. It's really interesting. The whole story started back in about 2019, but I'm not going to go through the story at this very moment. I'm just going to get to the bottom line. And the bottom line is we're in a very interesting time in humanity. And we operate at a pace unprecedented than ever before. And that pace is preventing us from getting the sleep that we need. Because the aha moment for me, and most of the people I talk to, is that you make your hormones in your deep sleep. You only get 60 to 90 minutes of deep sleep a night on average. And that's if you get an uninterrupted 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night.
Mm.
If you don't, you actually forfeit deep sleep, and therefore you forfeit hormone production, and therefore you're operating at a hormone deficit the next day because you make your hormones the night prior. And so it really comes down to if you get 6, 5, 4 hours of sleep a night, or you wake up 2 or 3 or 4 times a night, you are operating at a hormone deficit the following day, and too many consecutive nights of disruptive sleep, and you're going to be feeling miserable. And it's that simple. And the reason you can't get that sleep is because your cortisol is too high. And cortisol is too far removed from symptoms. And that's why it's gone under the radar. Even though it's become a trendy word in the past 6 months, it's gone under the radar. And people don't realize that I've got hot flashes. Your cortisol's probably to blame. Why? Because you're not getting the sleep, you're not making the hormones that you need, and therefore your menopausal symptoms are exacerbated. If you're a guy, your testosterone levels are lower. If you're a teenager, you're going to college, you're not getting the sleep, yeah, you're going to start getting high stress. And so it's all related. And it really comes down to that simple equation. But people don't get low testosterone and go, where's the cortisol section? Or people say, I'm having hot flashes. Where's the cortisol section? It's too far removed, too many derivatives removed from the underlying symptoms to the underlying cause. And that's really what Rebalance kind of uncovered. And it was a really interesting journey to get to where we are today.
Yeah, man. And I have to say this because he won't, but as somebody who's giving this answer, he is also an incredible entrepreneur with an incredible company who navigates the same challenges that we do when it comes to client retention and ads not running and dealing with meta and the world of here, and in that bucket building and scaling a beautiful, beautiful company with incredible products while navigating what we all see as this epidemic of stress, right? And so I know personally, and just for everybody listening, I've never talked about this on the show, but sleep has been something that's been a very, very big challenge of mine. And yet I'm surrounded by all my friends like Dr. Michael Bruce, the sleep doctor, and Jim Quick, who nailed me with sleep for so long. And it was like overdose melatonin, but never even getting into like sleep ranges. And I take these, by the way, and this is crazy. I'm not being paid for this whatsoever. Like I told him when he showed up on the show, I was like, no, they're with me right now. And I take the Dream one from Rebalance every single night, and it's within 20 minutes of popping that in. My Garmin's giving me 95 sleep scores every single night. I take it, and I wake up with so much energy and so much clarity. It's almost like foreign to me at this point of somebody who deals with this. And so, I have a question for you just around before we even get into the company and your story, like around entrepreneurship. Like you're a CEO and you're building this massive, massive company, and you're also aware of all of this and have lived a life of like navigating these undertones. Like, how do you go about your day to day, or like what advice or recommendations or even mistakes do you see people making constantly that leads to this elevated cortisol, leads to this stress, and how can they mitigate that?
Well, it's really interesting. Funny enough, we are writing a book. It's finished. It's a final draft, and we hope to release it in time for Q4 with the working title of Surviving Stress Nation, because that's exactly kind of the problem that I see that is facing the modern world. I think you just got to come from love. And I don't mean to sound cheesy or anything like that. But if you come from love and you come from your heart space, and you know in your soul deep down that what you have is really transformative for the planet, which I do. It's not a private labeled thing. It's a really well researched 4-year company at this point. We've got clinical studies, meaning we actually did IRB pharmaceutical grade studies on our product not an ingredient that someone else did and marketed it as clinically tested, but we actually tested our product and been published in medical journals. So when you come from that belief that you really know that you have something that works and is efficacious and is good and comes from moral and ethical, a place in your heart, you really don't need to freak out to the extent that I have in my past, because I believe that getting on podcasts like this, hopefully some others that are also extremely well known like yours, that will spread the word, because I believe that good overcomes evil. I believe in that kind of mantra, and you have to also have some frame of reference as to what's good for your health and what's not. I know if I sit on the couch eating bonbons and pizza and stay up all night, I'm not going to feel so good, right? If I work out go for a run at 10 o'clock at night, yeah, that's not the best thing for sleep and cortisol support that you could do. So there's some basic fundamental understanding about how the human body functions and operates that will serve people. And I try to live that life, and I walk the walk and talk the talk. So I go to bed every night between 8:45 and 9 o'clock, right? I wake up at 4:30. It's something I developed when I had kids. I wanted to be there and help them in the evening. And if I went to work out in the evening like I used to, I wouldn't see my kids. So I changed my lifestyle. But I operate where I go to bed at the same time every night. Sleep hygiene is critical. I try to not eat heavy within 3 hours of going to sleep. I try to finish my meals like then. I'm 50 years old. So I don't want to be drinking water at 8 o'clock at night. I'm going to be up at 10 o'clock going to the bathroom, right? My body's aging. And so I set myself up for success. I drink all my water in the morning, in the afternoon, and I try and deplete my water intake towards the later afternoon, early evening, simply because I want to make sure that my body has utilized anything I've put inside of it to optimize my sleep routine, because sleep is sacred. It all comes down to sleep. And then, of course, it's your cell phone. Cannot be a slave to this thing. And we all are. I know I am. I am a slave to this thing, right? There's no question. Every time it bings, buzzes, beeps, dings, whatever it does, it's a cortisol spike for me, because it's news. It might be good, it might be bad, but you don't know until you physically open it. And we've been trained for the better part of 30 years that we need to know what it is. And with the onset of gamification around social media, we are addicted. There's no one on the planet that can say they're not. I truly believe everyone's addicted to this thing, because it could even be your loved one, right? I have a ringtone for my kids. When it rings, I panic and I answer it.
Yep.
And so this thing is really the crutch of the problem. And technology is a wonderful thing, but where my vice is with, let's call it, Silicon Valley, is they developed it, but there was no social responsibility around how they released it and how we were trained to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's caused this problem. And so I turned this thing off. And it took a while, because I got kids in college and I freak out because where are they? Are they safe? Are they good? But I turn it off.
At night? Yeah.
And it mustn't be next to your head. It mustn't be next to you. You want it in a different room. You want to use an old-fashioned alarm clock, right? You want to get rid of the EMFI, all that stuff. You just got to kind of cleanse yourself of the need to be around it. And if you do wake up, the last thing you want to do is pick it up. I'll just check my texts, my social media, my feed, no, because the blue light, it's not a fictional thing. The second that your eyes come in contact with the light, it triggers a natural cortisol release, because it emulates the sun. And your body is used to, when the sun rises, you wake up. When the sun goes down, you go to sleep. Mm-hmm. And so there's no quick, I'm going to check it. The second you check it, you get a cortisol spike, your brain turns on, you don't go back to sleep. I've never been able to do it. I've been guilty of it. I can't do it.
Oh, no. I end up in the rabbit hole. Like
yes.
when it does pop up, right? Because I'm the same as you, where like I have, even when it's in at bedtime, it's the across the room, but I have it in do not disturb or sleep mode, but only like my kid or my kid's mom
Right.
comes through, and I'll hear that ringtone or even hear the phone buzz, and it's like my whole body is like, oh, you're awake. Like it reminds me of being in Afghanistan. It's like it's go time.
Yep.
And then I'm like, oh, I'll check it. But then I end up on it. And then an hour and a half later, and then my sleep's in the trash. And it feels like it this day. And by the way, I just need to call this out. You look so incredibly good for 50. I am going to do everything that you say because, like, I'm trying to age backwards too. But that just shocked me a little bit. And I end up in this like trailing effect. Like, I'm only 40, but it feels like when I get in that depletion,
Yep.
that the revenue, like the residue of that follows me for a couple of days. And one of the things that I've noticed is I'm immediately more emotional. Like I'm very reactive and I feel very ungrounded, and like I'll end up in this like emotional roller coaster when I don't get the proper amount of sleep. And then I'm trying to get on client calls or record a podcast, and I'm like, why am I crying right now? Right. And it's this like spiral that continues. And so I actually want to ask, and this is a tactical question. So no phone in the room, go to bed when you go to bed. What does your morning look like when it
Oh,
comes
I'm
to
up.
like starting the day?
My body's just naturally, I mean, you know, I was in the military, you're in the military, your body has a natural clock. It wakes up. And so my body's been trained for 20 years now to get up at 4:30. I'm up at
Mm-hmm.
4:30. I get dressed. I have 30 ounces of protein with some water, shake it up, hit the gym, come back, shower, walk the dogs, make breakfast, make my lunch for the day and my snacks, and I'm off to the office.
Mm-hmm.
Simple as that. Very, very structured. It's somewhat boring, but it works. And I believe in structure and discipline.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been coming up as like a resounding theme for me too. Like in when I get slippy or when I get emotional or things feel off, I can look at my routine. Like, oh, it's interesting. I stopped doing my prayer in the morning. Oh, because I picked up my phone,
Yeah.
or I skipped my 48 ounces of water with electrolytes, and now I'm
Yep.
wondering why I'm dehydrated and catching up later. And so there's that. I don't know about you, but there was a part of me when I got out of the military, I went the opposite way because I'm like, I did this for 13 years, like get away from me. And it's funny, over the years, I've almost like crawled my way back, and I'm like, oh, there was some science to this structure and discipline.
There was a great speech. I believe it was a graduation speech with a military officer. I believe he was in the Navy. And he said, your day starts by making your bed.
Yep.
Just doing one thing consistently sets you up for success. And yeah, I mean, if I don't work out, if I travel and my regimen is thrown, yeah, I don't feel right.
Yeah.
I just don't feel right.
Yeah, and I also like just want to like give kudos because like I know your company and I know what you do, and also like your personal life, which I'll ask in a minute, because I know even for me, like when you're sitting here and I feel like the relationship with the phone and the triggers and the cortisol, it's not a finish line. It's a renegotiated every day and building these protections and boundaries in. But even when you said it, my body was like, no, dude, I don't want to turn my phone off and put it in another room. Like, and I know you're right, right? Like there's this little kid in me that's like resisting it. And then you stack on life stress on top of it, right? And these
No,
events that happen.
no question. And it's kind of like what I talk about it in the book is people talk about diet. And since I can remember, there's a new fad every single year, whether it's the South Beach diet, the paleo diet, the vegetarian diet, whether it's a 40-30 diet, whether it's a keto diet, you know,
Carnivore's the big one right now.
right. At the end of the day, I don't have, a dog in that race. It's eat healthy. That's it.
Yeah.
Eat healthy. Eat less calories than you consume, right? But eat what works and what's right for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're vegetarian, fabulous. If you're paleo, fabulous. There are so many different books been written proving that one diet's better than the other or this diet's better than the other. And I say, just do what's right for you. Just don't go crazy. Don't eat sugar, right? Or eat as little as possible, right? And eat farm to table, whatever that looks like, but eat organic. Where I feel like we have gone wrong is when we went to kind of the mass production of food in the 80s, right? And we did processed foods and all this other aspartame and all this other nonsense that came out,
Yeah.
right? Just eat farm to table. The same with exercise. There isn't one exercise that's better than the other. Just exercise, right? There's, 10,000 steps. It's nonsense. There's no documented proof that it is what it is. It's just the way that someone came up with getting you to move. Just exercise, go for a run, do CrossFit, go for, a jog, spin. It doesn't matter. Burn calories, get your heart rate up, consume less calories than you actually use, and get your sleep. It's not rocket science. It's common sense. And I think that's what I get back to is it's common sense. But the problem is we have so much kind of distraction that we've been trained to obsess over, whether it's money, whether it's work, whether it's technology, social media, whatever. The technology's got in there because it kind of keeps us on a pace that we need to keep up with in order to be successful in today's world, right? What would you do if I took away email from you? What would you do if I took away the internet from you? Now, I got a few years on you, but when I was a kid, we had the Encyclopedia Britannica. When I was really a kid, like 6 years old, the television only had a few channels. And at midnight, the national anthem came on with this beautiful waving flag. And then it went to snow. I didn't have content after midnight.
Yep.
If I wanted to watch a movie or go watch a movie, I went to the video store. It was before even Blockbusters, but Blockbusters used them. There were only 3 or 4 movies behind the title cover. And if you were lucky, you got to pick the one that you wanted to watch.
Yep.
That was it. You had a couple of days to watch it and return it. But we're spoiled. We have unlimited content. We're addicted to content. And that content and that desire to kind of, I guess, drink all the information we can, whether it's entertainment or actual information, causes us to actually interrupt with our natural circadian rhythm. And that circadian rhythm is the one thing that we need to protect. Because without it, we cannot regenerate as humans.
Bro, I feel, I know you got a couple years on me, but you just took me in a time capsule because I remember even to get those movies from the family movie store, because they were all family-owned movie store, I would have to get on my bike and ride 4 miles to pick up the movie, to then ride my bike home, and then remember I have to return it. So there was like even built-in habit stacking on top of it of like being outside and moving and all those pieces. And I think, even as an entrepreneur, I say this to clients all the time, but pre-internet, people still had multi-7, 8, and 9-figure businesses without social media and without the internet and without YouTube, and they solved problems and they made it work.
And the one big thing for me is the news cycle. There used to be a news hour. You didn't have news 24/7. And there used to be maybe 1 or 2 news alerts. And when there was a news alert or a flash news story, right, it actually was an important story that affected your life. Now there's a news alert every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. And the world is a smaller place because of it. And it's not a bad thing, but it has invaded the sacredity of the circadian rhythm. And that's where the issue has kind of stemmed from. Now, all of a sudden, we all have a hormone problem, right? There's HRT that is gone absolutely crazy. It's like hormones have been given out like Botox, literally. And what people need to realize is there's no such thing as your testosterone needs to be above 600. That's nonsense. I don't know where this came from. I keep hearing it all the time. But your testosterone and my testosterone could be completely different levels. You could function fabulously at 400, and I could fabulously operate miserably at 800. Miserably, absolutely miserable at 800, right? Because everyone's DNA and genetic makeup is different, especially from an endocrinology perspective. It's like your fingerprint. It's unique. And so what does a doctor do? They do a hormone test, blood panel test on you. And that gives you a baseline of where you are at that moment in which you took the blood test. Then they do a big experiment on you based on basically questions. And they simply ask you subjective questions. And guess what the first question is?
Are you sleeping?
How are you sleeping?
Yep.
What's the next question?
Oh, I don't know what the next one is.
How's your energy level?
How's your
Next
energy
question
level? Okay.
is, how's your weight? How's your muscle mass? Are you working out? Right? How's your water intake? How's your diet? How's your libido? And based on the answers, the doctor will give an educated recommendation on a course of treatments that may work for you. And then they ask you, come back in 90 days and we'll do the same test all over again and say, we moved the bar X. And then they give you numbers. Now, based on those numbers, the doctor doesn't know anything other than your data, you've moved up X amount of points. His next question to you is what?
How's your sleep?
How are you sleeping?
Yep.
Right? How's your weight? How's your libido? And it's one big experiment, one human at a time, in order to find the quintessential and ultimate kind of ratio for your body. And I could be in the room with you and I'm on a different path from you. You could be absolutely beautiful, like I said, at 800, and I could be absolutely fabulous at 400. And so, guys, in this particular realm, when it comes to TRT, more isn't better.
Yeah. Okay. So I have to ask this question, and I don't know why, but my intuition decided to ask. Like, we have so many entrepreneurs that listen to this show, right?
Yeah.
And I think I will self-admit that the number one thing when business gets hard, or even when I get excited about something, the first thing that goes out the window is typically my sleep, right? It's this overwhelming of like, well, and I used to say this, and I hate to admit this, but it was built into me in the Marine Corps. I'll sleep when I'm dead, right? Like that was the big thing because we weren't allowed to sleep, right? It was like basically polyphasic
Yeah, well,
sleep
that's it. Sleep depression, right?
of every deployment. But when we think about the impact of sleep, like as entrepreneurs, right, on our performance, there's men and then there's women. Like, what do you see that like that trails down to and what it causes in them? So everybody can kind of start to understand
I don't
what
know.
they
For
can be doing.
me, I can only speak personally. I can't speak generally. For
Okay,
me,
perfect.
if I don't sleep, I'm not as fun. I'm not as energetic. I'm not as enthusiastic, and the passion leaves
Mm-hmm.
because you just don't show up.
Yep.
And so for me, I have to show up because all the people, and they're my partners in the company, right? They're not my employees, they're my partners. All my partners don't get the same energetic vibe and passion unless I show up that way because I'm leading the charge here.
Mm-hmm.
And there's good and there's bad, there's ebbs and flows. But to stay positive and enthusiastic is, for me, critical. If I show up and I'm in a mood, and there's been plenty of times where I've showed up in a mood, right? It shows up, it manifests throughout the organization.
Mm.
And I don't want that to happen. And so to me, sleep is critical, and you have to lead by example, especially since that's what we're preaching and that's what we're talking about here. But if I may, we are a cortisol company.
Yep.
We are not a sleep company. We are a cortisol company. And you spoke about taking Dream. Well, we only offer our products as a system. There's a morning and afternoon and an evening product.
I take all of them, just to be clear. I
Yeah.
just love the dream.
And so let me explain why, and it may change your perspective. What we're doing is supporting all the hormones with ingredients, but we are focusing on cortisol. There's a natural curve to cortisol. It should be nice and high in the morning, come down in the afternoon, and be as low as possible at night.
Okay.
And cortisol is a wonderful hormone. It's actually what I call the master hormone because every molecule in your body has a cortisol receptor. No other hormone does that. So literally, when your cortisol is elevated, you actually feel it systemically, completely through your entire body.
Mm.
Okay. And so you want cortisol because it gives you the energy and it supports with so many functions in the body. But you want to keep it within the normal parameters. The problem is it's doing this all day long, right? All day long. So one of the big things for me was, how can I support cortisol throughout a 24-hour period? Because if I take one supplement, believe it or not, there's only going to last you for 4 to 6 hours. Why? You have a metabolism. I think it's the fundamental flaw with supplements. Everyone forgets that you have a metabolism. You have a headache, your pain medication, every 4 to 6 hours. Why? Metabolism. Antibiotics, 4 to 6 hours. Cold flu medication, you get the gist, 4 to 6 hours, right? So that's why the system. And so what you're feeling, you think I'm taking Dream and I take Dream and it knocks me out and I'm asleep. Well, what Dream is doing is just doing the rest of the work that the other two lozenges did. We set you up for success by controlling your cortisol in normal ranges throughout the day, the afternoon, the early evening.
Yeah.
You took Dream and you went to sleep, but it is keeping you asleep. Now, we have a little bit of melatonin in our product. We also have a melatonin-free version of Dream, but it's the last ingredient. All the other ingredients, basically ashwagandha, maca, cordyceps, bacopa, oat straw, all the good ingredients. That's what's doing the lifting because melatonin helps you get ready for sleep. Melatonin does not put you to sleep, and melatonin does not keep you asleep.
Yep.
And taking endless amounts of melatonin isn't a solution.
Nope.
And so what we're doing is supporting this natural curve. Now, what happens is you get cortisol in normal ranges, you go to sleep and you stay asleep, and you make the hormones that you need. Well, when we launched initially 2 years ago, we were a cortisol branded company, men's system, women's system. Then all of a sudden, these customers came to us and our employees and partners came to us and they were like, my GERD is gone,
Mm.
which is indigestion.
Mm-hmm.
My libido's come back. My hair, skin, and nails have improved. My hot flashes have gone. And we were like, what? We knew that it would support endocrine health, right? Because you're sleeping, you make more hormones. And then we got more and more calls from people saying, my hot flashes have gone. My brain fog is gone. My anxiety is reduced. And so we decided to do a whole bunch of studies until finally we were like, we got to do a real study, like a real study. So we enrolled 104 women in an IRB controlled clinical study. It was not a double blind placebo. It was just straight, we'll give you the product. I personally feel that double blind placebos are wrong because if you know you have a product that works, why would you give someone something that's a sugar pill just so they can potentially fake it? And so we didn't do it. For the record, we are in a 200 plus study right now, which is a double blind placebo because we got pushback from quite a few medical organizations about the study. But we have completed this study. The preliminary results were so good that the North American Menopause Society invited us to present our findings at their annual meeting in September of last year in front of thousands of endocrinologists and OBGYNs. When the study was finally published in Q1 of this year by the Medical Journal of Nutraceuticals and Food Science, this was the outcome. 100% efficacy, 0 side effects, with the average reduction in the 104 women of hot flashes was 80%. That was an 80% on average reduction. High 70s in reduced anxiety, improved energy, better mood and disposition, better hair, skin, and nails, libido was improved across the board. Amazing outcome. And so we decided to rebrand our products based on the symptoms, not the underlying cause. And so we have a hot flash system, we have a testosterone system, and we have an anxiety system. What's the difference? Nothing. There's minuscule differences. There is different ingredients that for men, slightly different for women. So the testosterone has, horny goat weed and testosterone and things like that. In the women's, we've got bacopa and oat straw because it's designed to support a nervous system and calm that down because women's nervous systems are far more sensitive than men's. But in general, all three systems do the same thing. They support cortisol to enable you to get a good night's sleep, which means that you stay asleep, so that your body can naturally make the hormones it knows what it needs at night. So you wake up the next day like you feel, George, and you've been on it for 30 days.
30 days.
And you sleep like no other. You sleep like you should as a human being, but
Well,
it's not a magic pill.
I have to say, and thank you for acknowledging that. I'm the guy that, like, when I feel something, sleep has been the one thing my whole life, and you know this from being in the military, was the biggest battle for me in
Right.
getting out. And then entrepreneurship became my new addiction, right? Because I was celebrated for it, right? The more I worked, the more I quote unquote hustled, the more everyone's like, dude, you're crushing. You're like, why is nobody celebrating me for like taking a day off or spending time with my family? So sleep was like a big one for me. But I will say that, like, somebody who in the last year and a half has basically walked through one of the hardest situations in my life,
Yep.
and things that years ago would have like broken me, I noticed that like that was the biggest thing. I would just sit in bed and ruminate. I would have nightmares. Like, it would just, the brain wouldn't stop. And there's been quite a few times in the last 30 days that I haven't taken dream, not because I forgot, but because I put my head on the pillow and I just passed out. Like, I just laid down and I was like out because like I'm ritualistic with these things now because, quite frankly, part of me loves the mint, and it's like my morning routine where I wake up and I chug my water and then I'm like, oh, I have to have these with a little snack before I get my coffee for the day. And then like right around like afternoon, I'm like, oh, it's time for my mint again. But I've noticed where like I had such bad reverse cortisol production, like pre-adrenal fatigue, for so long that I would be so sluggish in the morning, like groggy and out
Yeah.
of it. And then, it's like 7 p.m. would hit and I'm like, oh, it's like, let's go run a marathon. And now it's like my 7-year-old makes fun of me because we'll be sitting on the couch, like doing our nighttime thing, reading his books. He's like, Dad, are you falling asleep? It's only like 7:45, 8 o'clock. And I've noticed in the last 30 days, like genuinely, and before we even got on, I told Justin, and I'll tell everybody this the podcast, like I didn't expect these. And he's like, no, I want you to try them. They sent them to me and they came in the mail. I opened the glass bottles and I was like, numero uno, you nailed branding. And I love these little glass bottles because they traveled me everywhere. And I started taking them, and I've been made fun of because now my partner, we go to sleep and she makes fun of me and she's like, I thought you were dead because you fell asleep and you wake up in the same exact position that you were fell asleep in. You don't move. I barely think you're breathing. And then you just wake up alert and happy. And I even looked, I pulled up my sleep scores for last night and I got 2 hours and 45 minutes of deep sleep.
Wow, that's really good.
I had an hour and 45 minutes of REM sleep, and then the rest of it was light. And then I was only awake for 3 minutes throughout the entire night from when I went to sleep and woke up. And my resting heart rate was like in the 40s. My respiratory rate was really, really low. And if I compare these,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll show you mine. I got 7 hours and 45 minutes of total sleep, which is less than I would like. I got an hour and 20 minutes of deep sleep. I had 0 wake ups, and I had a 96% efficiency, and I got a score of 90, which is low for me. Normally I'm 95.
And I've personally noticed, like, as somebody who literally all I do is help supplement companies most of the time, right? So I have access to all of these things, right? And then I have the VA healthcare system that'll give me whatever I want. And I became so dependent on melatonin, but it wasn't even to help me sleep. It was just to try to turn my brain off. But I never worked at the root. And then I look at it and, like, for everybody listening, even when I travel a lot, and speaking to that point earlier, one of the first things I do when I wake up is wherever I am, I go outside without a shirt on and barefoot in the grass,
Ground.
and I start my day to like kind of ground, and then I like chug my water. And like looking at it, I was traveling last week and I was sleeping in a friend's like basement, so there was no natural light whatsoever, and it's like 10 a.m. and I'm like, why am I so sad? Like, why am I so feeling so depressed and whatever? And I'm like, oh, I wasn't going outside. And like even starting that circadian rhythm and all those different pieces. But like the system itself, like I will tell everybody about this till the day that I die, because I don't want to stop taking it, because I also feel energy and mental focus. And like I feel like there's no fogginess whatsoever, which is, somebody with traumatic brain injuries and things along those lines, memory
Yeah.
loss and things like that, and cognitive function were something I'd struggle with. Like I'd be working with clients or in a meeting, like, hey, can we take like an hour break? Like I got to go like ground, clear my head. Like I can't think straight. And it feels like I've been operating on rocket fuel, but not like limitless movie rocket fuel, like just this level of clarity. And I don't like mushrooms. I don't eat a lot of them. And I'm like, no, no, you got like everything mixed in there. And all these supplements that I have like on my counter that I never take consistently, to your point that
They're
we
gone.
had before the show, are all in, and it's so easy for me, and I genuinely love it. So thank you, number
You're
one.
welcome. Well, one of the things that I like to bring up is that I'm not bashing on supplement companies, right? Let
Yeah.
them be what they want to be. But there is no way that you can test how much of that ingredient gets delivered to the body. There is no assay, which is a pharmaceutical term. Their assay is a test in which you can do a blood test to measure, to trace that ingredient in the body and see how much entered. So when supplement companies give you ashwagandha, it's a guess as to how much is going to survive in your gut and get into your system. Same with most supplements, right? They don't know. Peptides cannot survive in your gut, right? They just can't. Yeah, people are putting peptide collagen in their coffee every day, but it's well established that peptides cannot survive in the gut. And even probiotics and prebiotics, there's studies now saying they don't work unless they're live, right? Unless they're
Mm.
live cultures, they won't work, because you can't put a dead something in your body and expect it to become alive and flourish, right? So it doesn't work. And so the one thing that we knew is that if it was a pill or a gummy, it wouldn't be as efficacious as if it was a lozenge. And these are lozenges. So you suck on them like it's your favorite cough sweet or mint or whatever it might be. You actively suck on them. And we know that the delivery in the buccal is a really good delivery. Next to a subcutaneous injection, either a nasal spray or a sublingual is the best delivery system scientifically. And I always go back to 2020. the government recommended a zinc lozenge. They didn't recommend a zinc gummy. They didn't recommend a zinc tablet. They recommended a zinc lozenge. And there's a reason for that. And so we have a lozenge delivery system. And we have a study that was published showing efficacy of delivery. And you're going to say, well, you just contradicted yourself because there's no assay. You're like, you're right. I traced melatonin because you can trace melatonin in the body. So I took the leading competitors of gummies and tablets and pills, compared it to my lozenge, and all we used was the melatonin and our delivery system. And we saw a 3x delivery, faster delivery, and longer lasting delivery than the other products that we compared them to, which were the leading ones in the marketplace. But I can tell you this, melatonin is a fabulous ingredient. We love it. We have it in our product. But it is not the product that you think it is. The way it's been marketed, the way it's been advertised, is not what melatonin does. Melatonin does not put you to sleep. Melatonin does not keep you asleep. Melatonin helps you get into a kind of twilight state to enable to induce sleep. Mm-hmm. And so people that take melatonin and they keep adding and adding and adding and adding, you're just interfering with your tolerance level. That's it. So there are plenty of studies out there that suggest that you should cycle melatonin. You should come on and off of it. Roughly every 30 days is our best analysis. And so that's why we have Dream Melatonin Free that's coming out this month. So we have both, with and without melatonin, so you can cycle one and then the other. Melatonin is unusual. Unlike testosterone or estrogen, progesterone, if you're on HRT, you stand an 80% chance within 12 to 18 months that your body will never make that hormone ever again, and you're stuck on HRT for the rest of your life. Melatonin doesn't have the same effect. You can come on and off melatonin. What you're getting used to is the dosage. So now you're used to 2 milligrams. Now you're going to go to 0.4 milligrams, and you're going to go to 8, 10, 12, whatever it is you're going to take, because you become insensitive to it. And tolerant to it. So you end up having to cycle on and off to recapture your ability to have the same benefit. And that's really about it. The rest of the products in the Dream are what keep you asleep, because it's keeping your cortisol at bay.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I don't talk about products a lot at all. And I mean, like, just genuinely for everybody watching this or listening, when we jumped on, I jumped on and got to meet his chief of marketing, Dina, and then him. And the first thing I was like, okay, I love you guys. I've been taking these things consistently. I don't know what it is, but you have like a fan for life, because the most important thing is, like, for me, like how I feel, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it wasn't this like rocket ship, but like over a couple days, I'm like, just like you, like I'm waking up with energy, like my nervous system's more regulated. I feel super clear about decisions. I'm navigating stressful times and situations, and I'm not feeling that like adrenaline inducing, like my cortisol spiking all day. And I'm pretty structured with like phone discipline and things along those lines, but it gets slippery and sneaky. And so,
Well, life
you know,
happens. Life
yeah,
happens, right? You can't stop life from happening. That's it, right? There's stuff that shows up, right?
yeah,
But that's fine. This isn't church, right? It's not like I forgive you for your sins, right? Because you answered your phone at 11 o'clock, right? And
yeah,
there's always life, and so it's just a matter of understanding the cause and effect, and that's really what this is about. It's
yeah,
You need to protect your sleep. You protect your sleep, you will actually feel significantly better. And for women that are suffering with menopausal symptoms, to
yeah,
have a product that gives them such relief is amazing. But it does come with some life lessons, right? You still need to eat healthy. You still need to drink water. You still need to exercise, and you still need to protect your sleep and have good sleep hygiene, right? If you do that, be fine. And we've had women that have been crying on the phone with us saying, "You've changed my life. I was spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars every month trying to find a solution. My doctor wants to put me on hormones, or my doctor wants me to put me on birth control." And that's not necessary for the majority of people. There are always exceptions, and HRT is a great solution. I just feel like it's not the first solution that should be thrown out as a quick fix for everybody, because you're messing with your body's natural ability to heal and fix itself. And because of technology, we're kind of brushing over it, and we're just so quick to, here's your magic pill. There isn't a magic pill in anything. It always comes with pros and cons. And so if you can go back to how the human body should function, you'll be fine for the most part. And there's always going to be a few people that aren't and going to need some extra support. But no one's broken. And to me, that's the big thing that shows up all over the place. People come from fear all the time, advertising to everyone's fears.
Hmm.
Um, and the solution is eloquent and it is natural. But we haven't evolved as human beings. We are the same human beings we were 10,000 years ago. We are the same. We still require sleep to regenerate, to enable our body to reset. You've got neuropruning, right? Synapses pruning, where you deliberately delete some of the things that you did yesterday because you don't need to keep all that. You keep the high points, you get rid of all the stuff that's superfluous. That doesn't happen unless you get your deep sleep,
Hmm.
right? And so you need the HGH. You need all these ingredients in this process to enable you to be human. And what's
Hmm.
happening is we all feel less and less human because of technology. So really it comes back to just grounding, like you said, learning what's important and not sweating the small stuff. And that's super easy. But I was on social media last night and I was listening to my son. He was right next to me and he was on social media. And there was this voiceover saying something like this. I'm going to paraphrase. If you want to buy things without having to look at the price, stop looking at the clock. That's horrific advice. And America in general has always been the those that work hard win.
Hmm.
And yeah, you can look at all these amazing entrepreneurs and they probably had horrific sleep hygiene, but they probably suffered later on in life with
Yep.
other issues, cancer and disease. And what is disease? It's dis-ease, right? It all comes together in this big picture. And I'm not saying that we've got the fountain of youth or that we can cure anything because we can't. What I'm saying is there is a set of rules that we should follow as human beings that we have abused for way too long, specifically the past 30 years.
Yeah.
And the abuse has come in the form of technology that has come in the guise of it'll help you be more efficient and be faster and help you be successful. But at what cost?
Yeah, and I actually think this is an opportune time because one of the things that you said is, life happens. And I would love if you wouldn't mind kind of sharing a part of your story with you and your partner, because I also think it's incredibly powerful for other entrepreneurs to hear that like life does happen, but everything that you've said today, which genuinely, like, I'm over here like, yes, please, I'll listen to you all day. And all of these, you've also navigated and lived this. And it's not that you've had this cherry picker life of like, oh yeah, there's no trauma, there's no anything. Like, so would you mind sharing like some of that story of like how you got here? Because you've navigated a lot to have this perspective, but also you live this way.
Yeah, I've had multiple failures in my life in business. It hasn't all been, roses. I was very blessed. I came across a man about 12 years ago that decided to believe in me. He became my mentor. We've started a few companies together. The last company that we started together was called Elastin Skincare, which turns out to be the number one medical skincare line in the world right now. We sold to Galderma in 22. Um, but I learned a lot of lessons along the way, and he's always very, very quick to pick up the phone and kick me in the rear end and said, "You messed up. You shouldn't have done that. You need to do this. Stop being a jerk." And I love it, and I listen, and he's like a second father to me. And when we were in the process of building out Elastin, Nestle called us and said, "Can you develop a supplement for skincare?" Because we were skincare experts. And long story short, I didn't like the concept and I pivoted towards hormones because I was a little obsessed with what's going on with the HRT market, what's going on and why. So I started pivoting towards endocrinology and I naturally hooked on to cortisol and then put together a very large panel of doctors and experts to help guide and navigate what we were trying to do. We were also looking at peptides. And unfortunately, in 2019, the peptide market was kind of reclassified by the FDA as biologics. And so most of all that disappeared. And so we definitely started looking at the supplement industry and nutraceutical market. And at that time, my wife, who has a severe TBI, if you think of Adam Sandler's 50 First Dates with Drew Barrymore. That's basically us. She's missing 25% of her front parietal lobe and she forgets things. And her superpower to me is watching movies for the first time, even though she saw it last weekend. It's like, I've never seen this. And so listening to my wife laugh over something, it just melts my heart and it just gives me so much joy. And we all crack up because like, we just saw this. I've never seen this. And so it's fabulous to see that. But in 2020, out of nowhere, she was diagnosed with Cushing's, which is an overdevelopment of cortisol, right? I mean, if the universe doesn't smack you over the head, that was a massive smack from left field because I was already in the space and my love basically got diagnosed with something that was horrific and it got pretty serious within 6 months. I actually thought I was going to lose her. She couldn't get out of bed. She wasn't eating. She had no energy. She wasn't sleeping. And so it became very personal. I needed to find a solution. And therefore, I didn't have any good work ethic at that point, right? In terms of sleep hygiene, I worked around the clock. I didn't care because I was on a mission. I needed to make sure I could find something that would work for her, as well as my shareholders. And I had responsibilities to everyone, but in my head, it was my wife. Mm-hmm. And that's how we kind of evolved through this process, was trying to find something that worked, that moved the needle. And so we used nothing but the best quality ingredients. If it didn't move the needle and didn't have a purpose, we didn't put it in there. We didn't just grab whatever we could off the shelves. We went and searched for the best ingredients, organic wherever possible, or natural wherever we can. We only have two ingredients that aren't natural. They're synthetic. One is melatonin and the other one is EDTA. And people go, why on earth would you use EDTA? Well, guess what? EDTA is used as a basically keloid cleansing element for detoxifying against metals in hospital. It's an agent. And it's a supplement you can buy off the shelf today. But I use it because I believe that metals found in our food supply are extremely disruptive to our endocrinology, right? Our natural hormone systems are being poisoned by, example, fish that carry high levels of mercury, right? And so I wanted to use everything I could in my tool belt to help clean the body, to detox the body, and to help the body have the best opportunity to generate hormones again through the system focused on supporting cortisol, which ultimately leads you to get sleep naturally, which enables your body to make hormones naturally. So yeah, the story became very personal to me in 2020. And I'm thrilled to say that my wife is thriving and her cortisol has never been lower.
I love that. And thank you for sharing too. There's, like when I hear you answer that question, I just want to say this for everybody listening. Like there's the answer itself, but there's so much profound wisdom in there that even as like the founder of the company, like believing in what you're creating and having a personal vision and mission that keeps you going regardless of like the circumstances in front of you, and like that belief that you speak about, I think is such a powerful, profound, right? I wrote a post about this the other day, right? Because fear and faith can't exist at the same time. But like as entrepreneurs, we have to believe it, but also you have to take care of yourself to have the ability and the gas in the tank to be able to go execute it. And
Yeah.
it's profound.
And no one's perfect. I mean, like I said, I've fallen off the bandwagon many times, right? All of a sudden, we've sold out. I have no product. So how can I help people? I might, you're up all night. How am I going to solve this problem, right? And so I always go back to some advice my uncle gave me many years ago, which says, there are always going to be issues. They're not problems, they're issues. And how quickly you resolve those issues determines how successful you are and how good you are.
Mm. I also love that like everything that you say, and this makes me really, really happy. It just comes down to the simplicity of it, right? Like you even said this earlier, right? Like there's some discipline and consistency required, but it's the simplicity in all of it. Like
Yeah.
we have this immediate gratification or wanting this easy pill or this magic answer,
Yeah.
but it really boils down to the simplicity of it. Like, how are you going to show up? Like, are you taking care of yourself? Are you prioritizing your health, or are you sacrificing it to build something that you'll never be able to enjoy?
And everyone knows this. You inherently know this, but it's not always so easy to execute. Like
Yeah.
everyone knows they should eat healthy, but there's always a reason why maybe I didn't make that choice in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cheat day. I have an extra cheat day. And we're human.
Hmm.
right? So you don't beat yourself up. I remember someone told me once that the guilt associated with having a treat is almost worse than the calories you got from the treat.
Hmm. Yeah. As somebody who used to be bulimic and struggled with eating disorders, it was the rigidity of the perfection that made it worse,
Right.
right? And then the pattern that continues. But even on those days, there's days where I'm like, oh, I was going to post on Instagram today. Oh, I didn't. And then it's like ruminating about it or getting upset about it doesn't help me write another post or take another picture or come up with a concept to share, right? It's really the
It's that inner
recovery.
voice. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
that inner voice that you'd be wise to tame it
Hmm.
because we all have it. And my wife always says all the time, she's a life coach. She says you've got to learn to love yourself. And as cheesy as it sounds, and as woo-woo as people may think we are, right? Coming from love actually helps in so many situations. Because if you come from love, you don't snap, you don't bark, you think of things, and maybe you can find a solution that's faster than if you had all that pent up energy that's maybe negative or, self compromising in any way. And so, really, just coming from love and being in that place, I can solve this. How can I do this? If I approach it this way. Well, how is that person showing up, and how can I approach it from a different perspective that gives us a win win versus a win lose? It's always
Hmm.
about a win win. How can we make this mutually beneficial?
Yeah, and that's something that I just hear embodied in everything that you say, even when talking about your product, your team as partners,
Oh, yeah.
the way that you see your customers, the way that you reward them and support them. Like it's a win-win around having an impact. This is an impact-driven company, and I love that.
I don't own double digits of the company, nor does my partner. We syndicate every single deal we do. We share the wealth, the love, the opportunity. All employees have stock options and stock, and they get constantly rewarded as we hit milestones. We all get rewarded. It's not just the top, right? Everyone gets rewarded, because then it becomes a mission for all, and it's not just supporting the few. And so it's about helping the planet, George. It's not about just profits and successful exits for shareholders and everyone to be, in a financial security. It's to help people because we actually have a product that does help people. We've been published in 3 medical journals. We've got 2 more clinical studies coming now, and our product works. And it's too easy to say, yeah, let's raise the price. No, we've deliberately kept the price low. We've deliberately kept it out of retail, because then the middleman, the distributor, has to make a margin. Then the retailer has to make the margin, and it becomes out of control. And we want to make this available to the masses because it's a very simple thing. Suck one in the morning, suck one in the afternoon, and suck a lozenge at night. End of story. Simply suck on these mints, and they are literally mints. They take anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes to dissolve, and you're done. And it's not a big deal. Just like you're chewing gum, you do it whilst you're doing other things. And myself, Dina, we're always on calls, and we're popping these lozenges every day, and you
Yep.
can't overdose on them. You take them, and they're actually really enjoyable, and they work. They keep you kind of at a nice, equal kind of state. And like you said, you go home and you have a smile on your face. You're more balanced, you're more even, and you fall asleep.
I feel like I want to title this episode "Sleep and Suck on Mints." Like it's the two the two undertones of all of this for success.
Yeah. And, don't beat yourself up if you miss one, right? It's no big
Yep.
deal, right? You can't overdose on them. And, if you come off of it, you certainly, most people notice a big difference. Like, oh my God, I can feel the anxiety building up. Or I can feel this nervous energy coming up. Or even women that are going through menopause, like when I stop taking them, my hot flashes come back. It's
Yep.
horrible. And we've got women saying, wow, I'm down 2 pant sizes because when you have high levels of cortisol and you're stressing out and you start going through that kind of beautiful phase of life, visceral fat starts to take over and things start to happen. And we're like, my visceral fat's going away. I'm losing pant sizes. I feel like my old self again. I'm like, you weren't broken. You're not broken. And it's frustrating when the media and products are trying to convince people that they're broken,
Hmm.
and they're not. Also, it's like the government trying to it's a disease. It's not a disease. It's like puberty. It's a phase of life and it should be celebrated. There's
Mhm.
absolutely nothing that should be associated with menopause that should be negative or convinced that it's something that you're broken. There's nothing negative about puberty. It's a phase of life. It's beautiful. And it's just this exacerbation of technology that has caused all these symptoms to get out of control. And we are far too quick to say, hey, take this bioidentical hormone, take this pill, take this, and it'll fix it. It's like Vioza. It doesn't fix anything. It just turns off the thermostat in your brain, your NK3 receptor. It doesn't fix the underlying endocrinology issue. It's just a band-aid, and it doesn't work.
I'll take it all day. And I'm going to say this now for everybody listening because we're going to be wrapping the show in a minute. But I'm going to make sure that I link everything in the show notes. But also to make it really, really easy for your brain, it's rebalancehealth.com. Rebalancehealth.com. And I'm a massive proponent. And even to what you said earlier, I took a trip 2 weeks ago and I forgot them. And I genuinely felt homeless a little bit because I've also been using them and I definitely noticed. And it was the first thing I went home, found them, put them in my suitcase for the next trip. And I'm like, these have a permanent spot where I pack. So they're always in the same spot. So I know that they're there because I genuinely love them. So for everybody listening, the best place to find it is rebalancehealth.com. And we'll put everything in the show notes. And Justin, I want to ask you just one more question, and you can go anywhere with this. But we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to this at different stages of life, different stages of business. They have a business, but they also have a life, right? And if you were imparting like any wisdom or things to focus on for them, or what would like your advice be if they were all sitting in front of you of like how to take next steps forward, how to navigate this stress, like how to go about all of this? Because there was so much incredible wisdom shared in this show. I would just kind of love like
Oh my goodness.
your cherry on top and whatever life wisdom you want to impart in our direction.
Find that work-life balance. Find that happy place. And you hear the old adage that if you love what you do, it's not work. And yes, I believe that, but there has to be some balance in your life with other things. It can't be all consuming. And as a father, I find joy in my kids, and I try to make time for them whenever they call. So it doesn't matter if I'm in the middle of a work day or a meeting. If they call in the middle of it, hey, can I call you right back? And I make a mental note and I actually call them back and just chat, even if it's for 30 seconds to say, I love you. It's that balance, that harmony, because it just drives you further to do what you want to do professionally. So for me, it's finding that balance in the world. That is my space.
Mm. Yeah, I can't make that any better. The only bow I'll add on top of that and sleep. Sleep more and prioritize your sleep and use the one superpower that we all have access to, which is sleep, and make it a priority.
It's part of the human kind of function. You have to sleep. You just simply have to. That's how your body regenerates. And you will not be very effective the following day if you don't. And you just sort of have to look back. There's been those times where you've partied all night or you haven't slept and you just felt terrible the next day. So it's not something that I'm saying that is a surprise to anyone. But I think we haven't stressed the importance about it enough. And Rebalance is a way to help you get that uninterrupted sleep by supporting lowering the cortisol, which is the one hormone that's preventing you from getting to sleep and staying asleep.
Heard it from him, and trust me, I'll say this, and I'm not joking, but to look at like that at 50 and to navigate the life that you've navigated when you were like, I have kids in college, and I'm like, oh, 50. I'm I'm going to strive to be like you. So I will do whatever you say. Sleep is definitely staying at the top of the list, and so is rebalance. And I'm a big fan. And I thank you so much for taking the time today and sharing our wisdom. I actually I know a lot about health and a lot about sleep, and I learned a lot today. And it's kind of like the right amount of tickles where like feel a little challenged on my relationship with my phone again, and like my priorities around my routine and sleep and like how I treat it. And so I thank you for the reminders as well, because it's really important. And I thank you for sharing all of that with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a privilege. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So everybody listening, I would take a chance, because the worst thing that you'll do is learn something, but go check out Rebalance Health. And as always, whatever landed today, whatever tickled today, take it as an invitation. If you've been going to bed with your phone, maybe put it in another room, maybe set an alarm to remind yourself to start winding down. maybe find some harmony and balance and go do something fun and get out of that, hustle and grind culture. But like, if anything landed or resonated today, like, use this as the opportunity to recover, because we're not bad. You're not a sinner. You didn't do anything wrong. It's just a gentle reminder, and it's ones that we all need in these conversations that allow us to focus on the things that really, really matter. And you are the most important asset you have in your life and in your business, and it needs to be a priority. And so whatever you do, let that be the thing. And so remember that relationships will always beat algorithms. So you'll either see me in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs. But either way, we're done.